before I start, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Chris Suter for getting me out tonight. And honestly, I wasn't going to say this is not some kind of paid thing or nothing like this. Chris just done it out of the goodness of his heart, and the main thing is when I walked into his shop today, you know, I could see somebody that genuinely wanted me to do well, you know what I mean, and had that genuine energy about him. So thank you, Chris, for number one, making me look good, but most importantly, for making me feel good.
Write it down, thank you.
Alright, let's get going, I guess. It's my first time doing this, so I'm not gonna lie, I am a bit nervous. I would much rather fight some of you than do this. However, I do have a rule in life, and I suggest this rule to every man, especially women also. And my rule in life is, I don't fight for free. The reason I don't do it is that when you're fighting for free, one person is going to the guards, the other is going to the hospital. Nobody wins. So don't do it. Don't do it. If somebody pays you to do it, that's a different story. For free, that's not a good thing to do. Alright, so I was born in the Soviet Union, in a little town called Zavolzhye. It's only a small place by Russian standards, about 50,000 people. Life in Soviet Union was very, very gray. You know, there was none of the brands, you know, you didn't see any ads on TV, there was nothing really, you know, there was no movies, you didn't really, it was very, very gray, very, very boring. It was so boring to a point there that my snack, for example, was brown bread with salt and vegetable oil on top. And that was the best snack I could imagine. If I wanted something sweet, it was white bread with sugar and water on top. If you're wondering what the water was for, it was to make the sugar stick, in case you're looking for a recipe. My mom, she was a primary school teacher, and for some reason, I don't know why, but in Russia and Soviet Union, school teachers is a job that pays the least. So we always struggle financially as a family. And I remember as a kid, when the Soviet Union collapsed first, I suddenly started seeing all these ads on TV of chewing gums and chocolates and all the cool things, you know, but we couldn't get it in shops yet. Because I lived in a small town, quite a good bit away from the capital, and those things were already available in the capital, but my town didn't really have them yet. And there was this one ad in particular that I remember, was a Snickers ad. And it was where they showed how the chocolate was made, they showed the chocolate being poured, and they showed the nuts and everything, and it looked so delicious, especially for a kid from Soviet Union that never tried any of these things. And I remember watching that ad and like dreaming of trying Snickers, but it just wasn't available. And when I finally got my hands on one Snickers, I didn't eat it right away. I waited for the ad to come on. And I waited for the whole thing to be shown. I waited for the chocolate being poured, and I waited until the moment the guy was going to take the bite out of his Snickers, and that's when I took a bite out of mine. And I still remember this. This was the most incredible feeling in the world. There was an explosion of flavor in my mouth. A rainbow of different flavors. I just couldn't believe how tasty it was. So the city I grew up in, Zavolzhye, it was a very, very criminal city. You know, there was the rate of crime was going through the roof. Mainly for our reason, our city was very, very industrial. There was a lot of different factories in there. So back in the Soviet Union, they had the great idea of building a prison in the middle of town. And all the prisoners would work in all these different jobs. But when they got free, many of them remained in the city. So as a result, literally half of the city are ex-convicts, you know, people that used to be in prison. My mom, when Soviet Union collapsed and you were allowed to engage in business and you were allowed to basically make money, there was no more communism, she realized that her job was so badly paying, you know, she was making something like $50 a month. And we couldn't really make our ends meet, you know, it wasn't enough to provide them, you know, for food or anything like that. So my mom, being the great woman that she is, she decided to start her own business also. And because she's such a smart woman and a very, very hard worker, she actually managed to build it up to the point where she had 2 jewelry stores of her own. As our city was very, very criminal, it didn't really affect my mom earlier on because she was friends with one of the main guys, this criminal guys in the city. So as a result, no one really, touched her, nobody gave us any trouble. But one day, this guy dies in a car crash. And literally, the next day, we have 10 guys in our house with guns, demanding money, demanding protection, money. To make things worse, in 1998, hit a huge financial crisis in Russia. And things got even worse. This is no way to live the life, this is just impossible, you can barely provide for the family, your life is constantly in danger, so we made a decision to move away. As a Russian citizen back in those days, it was extremely difficult to get a visa into one of the developed countries like USA or Canada. We had tried, but got denied. So we picked up this newspaper and saw an ad for Argentina. The ad described it, as they always do, as paradise, as a place where there's loads of jobs and money is everywhere and everything is good. So my mom, myself and my stepdad have made a decision to move away from Russia to Argentina. We had no Spanish, we had very little money with us, but we felt that nothing could be worse than Russia at the time. We were wrong. When we got there, because we had very little money, we rented this tiny little room in a hotel. Now I say a hotel, it was more of a hostel. The room was absolutely tiny, there was no windows, just the door. The kitchen was shared with 50 people. The toilet was shared with 50 people. I remember my mom sat on one of the beds and just closed her face with her hands and started crying because she realized that she thought that she was bringing me into a better life, and she actually had put me in danger. She brought me into a worse life. We kind of sat thinking what to do next, and the initial decision was made to send me back to live with my grandma because we only had enough money for one ticket. However, if we had taken that option, that meant that my mom and my stepdad would have been staying there without a cent to their name. No money to pay for food, no money to pay for their rent. So after a little family conversation, we decided that we were going to try and make it in Argentina. We had no Spanish, but we had brought a dictionary with us. So we opened it up, we looked up 3 words: I, look, job. And the 3 of us went around Buenos Aires and we knocked on every single door. Didn't matter what it was. Coffee shop, petrol station, restaurant, anything. We knocked on the door and we said those 3 words: I look job, I look job. And we done it from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening, every day, day after day, week after week. And we got a little bit lucky there because my stepdad, Sergey, is a very good car mechanic. So we came to a garage and there you didn't need Spanish. They pointed at an engine and said, can you fix that? Yes. Pointed at a wheel, can you do that? Yes. This? Yes. Right, come on, you start tomorrow. And so then our situation got a little bit better. We didn't get rich or anything like that, but we were at least able to afford food and were at least able to pay for our accommodation. And this is when I actually learned, because before that I always felt like lawyers or finance guys are above, the tradesmen, And over there, I quickly realized otherwise, because anyone that immigrated from Russia and was a lawyer, there were nobodies there. But a guy that could fix cars was somebody. He was a guy with a trade. He was a guy that could demand pay for the job, and it was the job that people wanted him to do. And another thing that I learned there was there were so many immigrants there. The ones I hang around with were mainly from Ukraine and Russia and the ex-Soviet Union countries. And there were many people that found jobs, and there were many that didn't. And among those that found jobs, as well as among those that didn't, there were those that prayed to get a job. There were those that read motivational material or whatever it was, books or anything else to get jobs. But yet, some succeeded and some didn't. And there was only one main difference between those that succeeded and those didn't. And that difference was the fact that those that succeeded actually done the work. They actually got up, went out there and done something. And that's when I realized all this motivational material and prayers and everything, that's just fuel. But in order to succeed, you actually have to get up and get it done and actually do it and keep trying and keep trying. Okay, but however, we lived in Argentina and things were okay now. However, we still knew that this was not a place to live, you know, this was a still third world country, you know, and like we didn't want fancy cars or nothing like that, but we just wanted to, we were a hard-working family that wanted to do hard work and get rewarded appropriately for it, you know, be able to afford food, be able to afford a holiday. So as a result, we knew that, you know, Argentina was not a place to stay. I mean, we had just come from Russia, we knew what that's like already. And all the immigrants used to talk among each other, you know, and kind of like, where can we go, what can we do, and one of the, for example, I guess, opportunities was at the time that with an Argentinian passport, you didn't require a visa in order to travel to US. So what people used to do was get an Argentinian passport and then go to US and then stay there illegally and find jobs and so on. However, the US government have become aware of that, and at the border they would be making it very difficult for you to get through the border control, even with Argentinian passports. So what people would have to do in order to get through was get a very fancy holiday, like a 5-star hotel, the most expensive holiday you can imagine. And then when you go like that, they will let you through. There was another problem with that. There was a situation with friends of ours, they got an Argentinian passport, they paid for the most fanciest holiday you can imagine to Miami. And when they flew there, they got stopped at the border and they said, no, you have to go back. And they said, well, what's wrong? What's wrong? We've got the passport. We have the fanciest holiday. We're just going to enjoy ourselves. And they said to them, well, you're going to a 5-star all-inclusive resort. Why is there pots and pans in your suitcase? But you know, obviously they had not that much money and they were preparing for a life in the States, so they were trying to bring whatever they could. But then in all these conversations, Ireland came up. You know, Ireland was experiencing the time of the Celtic Tiger. You know, the economy was booming, there was loads of jobs here. But this time we didn't want to go as a full family. You know, we said, look, we learned the lesson the first time. So my stepdad went the first. He found a job here and gave us the green light and said, look, just come over, everything is good here. So when my mom and me came over here, I was just turning 16. And I felt, right, I'm big enough now to get a job myself and I should start earning a living also. And of course I remembered my experience in Argentina, you know, going door to door and asking for a job. So I thought, well, this is what I'm going to do here also. However, this was Ireland now, and the first place I walked in offered me a job. And I was like, what? A job? So I couldn't believe it. I was just getting ready, to walk off and keep going, but I'm like, yeah, there's a job for you. It was a job washing dishes, and I still remember they offered me €6 an hour. And honest to God, I felt like I was the richest man in the world. Because at the time, like my friends and my friends' parents in Russia used to work for €50 a month. And there was me getting €6 an hour. I was just, if I do 10 hours, it's this, and 100 hours, oh, just give me all the hours. You know, give me all the dishes. You want your home dishes washed? Get them in here, I'm training. And I'm not messing. When I wash those dishes, you could see your reflection in them. You know, I put the work in. You know, the event is here in Derry, but I actually went to school not far from here, in Derry. I went to St. Unian's College. When I finished school, I moved to Dublin, not because I didn't like Derry, I absolutely loved it. But I wanted to be in a big university, and you know, unfortunately that's where they were, only in Dublin. You know, there was no big university that I wanted to go to over there. So I ended up moving to Dublin and going to DCU. I did a course, I did a bachelor in business. So when I was studying in college, I was 21 at the time, I was walking through the corridor one day and I saw an ad on the wall. It was just like a picture with two guys covered in blood saying, would you like to learn self-defense? And I was like, yeah, this is something I really love doing. Not only that, as a kid, I used to beg my mom to let me do fighting. I wanted to do boxing. But she always said, no, you can't do boxing, you'll get your nose broken. And she didn't let me do it. Not only did she not let me do boxing, she made me do ballroom dancing. So I actually ended up doing 5 years of ballroom dancing as a kid. And not only did I do ballroom dancing, I was going to competitions and everything. To be honest with you, I wish I had stuck to my mom's advice, because I went from being surrounded by beautiful women to wrestling sweaty men for years. Always listen to your mom. So I started training, and literally I was training for about 2 weeks, and I was like, this is something I love. This is my thing. I feel at home here. So after 2 weeks training, I came up to my coach and I said, right, where's my next fight? When is my first fight? He looked at me and said, what? You've been training 2 weeks, mate. Relax a little. You have to put the work in. I said, no, I want to fight. I'm ready for this. And he said, look, just train a little more and then we'll see how it goes. And so I started my training journey. As I was studying in college, of course, this was a full-time course. And on top of that, I was also working. Part-time, but really it was full-time work. And I was working almost every night in a bar. So finding time for training was very difficult. To make things worse, for me, in order to get to training, I had to get a bus and a Lewis, which made it, number one, very time-consuming, and number two, quite expensive for a broke student. So I purchased the cheapest bike I could get. It was like 50 euro. I got all the rain gear in pennies, and I was ready to start my MMA journey. I still remember it. It used to take me 40 minutes to go to training. Then, because it was such an effort to get there, I would always do 2 trainings in a row, which meant training for 3 hours straight. And then it would always take me an hour to get back. Number one, I was tired. Number two, there was more hills on the way back. And I still remember I would be cycling back home, coming from training very late at night. Rain would be pissing down on me. Cars would be flying past me. And there was this sign, I'm sure you've seen them sometimes, and it's a sign that if you go over the speed limit, it says in red, slow down. But then if you go within the speed limit, in green it lights up, thank you. So I remember cycling up this hill, and I was barely moving. I'm not messing, I'm barely moving, exhausted. Rain pissing down on me, every car flying by me, splashing me with the water, and I could see up ahead, slow down, to every car, slow down, and then I cycle up to the sign, and it goes, thank you. And I honestly felt like it was laughing at me. I would kick it down, and then I would get home, and I was sharing a house with 4 other guys, and they would be laughing at me as well, saying, what is wrong with you, mate? You pay to train there, it takes you hours to get there, you're soaking wet, what are you doing? You have college, you have work, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And that's when I realized that in order to succeed in life, you have to do something that you love, because then all these things don't matter. It didn't matter to me. What rain? I didn't see no rain. What cars? I didn't care about no cars. What effort? There was no effort to me. It was pleasure. So that's when I realized you have to do something that you truly love, that you're truly passionate about in order to succeed. And it's going to be not work then. It's just going to be pleasure. So then, finally started fighting at the age of 24. Started training at 21, but of course I couldn't start fighting immediately. Also, training wasn't easy, I was working, I was studying, it was hard to find time to train. So I didn't actually start fighting until I finally graduated from college, and I had a bit of free time, and I said, right, this is it, now this is my time. So at the age of 24, I started fighting. And I actually had my first fight in Derry, would you believe? It was in the Everglades Hotel, I believe. It was an amateur fight. Connor fought on the same card, he was the main event. I was the first fight, I was only an amateur, this was my very, very first fight. Even walking out to the fight, I forgot my gum shield. You know, I was just all over the place, didn't know what the hell I was doing. But one thing I did know after the fight was that I absolutely loved it. I loved every second, and I couldn't wait to get back in there again. I loved it so much that I said to my coach, "When's the next fight? When's the next fight?" And in my first 12 weeks of fighting, I had 4 fights. Just to give you an example, on average, people fight twice a year. You know, 2-3 times a year. That's considered already good. I fought 4 times in 12 weeks. And I couldn't get any more. You know, I was like, give me more fights, more fights, more fights. So that to a point that 7 months after making my amateur debut, I had taken a pro fight against the number 6 fighter in Europe. This has never been heard of, and still to this day, I've never seen anybody do anything like that. Certainly not in boxing, and definitely not in MMA also. His name was Dave Hill. Conor actually later on fought him for his first Cage Warriors title. Not only did I accept the fight on 4 days' notice, I also managed to win the fight. And it wasn't like a fluke win where, you know, you accidentally hit the guy and he falls down. It was a 3-round fight. It was a decision. I dominated every round and I won the fight. And after that fight, Conor had sent me a very, very first Facebook message. At the time, he wasn't yet a famous star. He was just one of the fighters in the gym. And the message said, your attitude to fighting is inspiring, mate. And of course, to me at the time, even though Conor was not a star yet, but he was one of the main guys in the gym. Combine that with the win over a number 6 guy in Europe, I was like, yes, risk pays off. You know, without risk, there's no reward. So as a result, from that moment on, I had never turned down a fight. I had never pulled out of a fight. If ever I was sick as a dog where I couldn't get out of bed, I still took the fight. If my hand was broken and I couldn't spar, I couldn't train, still took the fight. No matter what happened, I took the fight every single time. If I was ever offered 2 fights at the same time, I always picked the hardest one. And that ended up with my record being a little bit patchy. You know, I won a lot of big fights, but I also ended up losing a lot of the big fights. And that's when I learned another lesson that, yes, it is good to take the risks, and you should take the risks, because there's no reward without the risk. But you also have to be prepared to take the risks. So make sure that you know what risk you're taking. Make sure that you're going in there knowingly and well prepared to take that risk. All right. Every MMA fighter in the world dreams of making it into the UFC. Every single one. If there's one that tells you otherwise, they're lying. I guarantee you that. And I was no different. You know, I dreamt of making it into the UFC. We all did. Conor did. Every single one of us did. But it didn't really seem real. You know, there were guys that we watched on TV, and I didn't know really anybody that was successful in the UFC before. Until Conor won the second Cage Warriors title, and he finally got that phone call that said, look, we're going to offer you a contract. You're a UFC fighter now. You know, to all of us, this was a huge celebration. You know, we felt like we got the contract. It was incredible. And back in the day, because UFC and MMA was at the very early stages of it, and Conor wasn't a big star yet, there was very few of us training MMA. And in the gym, Conor always loved sparring very hard. He loved fighting basically every day. He used to like kill everybody in the gym. And as a result, because he was just a guy that, you know, was not famous, and a guy that's just gonna whoop your ass and then you're gonna go home, you know, crying, not remembering your name, nobody really wanted to spar him. But to me, I always saw it as an opportunity to learn. So anytime he asked who wants to spar, I was the only one that put my hand up. And so when he got into the UFC, I was the guy that came to corner him, you know, because I was always with him, I was always training with him, you know, I was always his brother, so as a result, I was the guy that came over. He won his debut, of course, the famous 60 G's baby phrase was born, and he was a star overnight. At the after party, Conor wasn't even there. He was so overwhelmed with joy, he just went to bed with his girlfriend and didn't even stay out partying with us. But I got a chance to meet the UFC matchmaker, Sean Shelby. It's basically a guy that decides who gets into the UFC and who doesn't. So after a few drinks, I got him in a headlock. And I said, listen mate, what do I have to do to get into the UFC? Give me some tips. You know, I fight everybody, I'm fighting whoever, whenever. I'll fight you now if you want. But, you know, give me some tips, you know, what is it that I have to do? And he told me at the time, look Artem, you have to get 6 more wins, and then I'll give you a shot. And that's all I needed to hear, you know, like, lovely, 6 wins, that's it. And the thing about MMA and fighting is that most people, 90% of fighters, if not more, pad their record. What that means is you show up to a fight and the people watching the fight don't know this, but the opponent is not there to win the fight. He's only there to give you the win. So he's not actually fighting properly. He, you know, makes it seem like a fight, you get the win, he gets paid, everybody happy. It is something that I've never done in my life and something I could never do, because in my mind it was like, this is fake, this is not real. I want to earn my shot in the UFC. I don't want it given, I don't want it faked. I want to earn it. I either make it or I don't. I don't want no handouts. And so, long story short, my first fight of the 6 that I meant to do, I'm fighting this judo guy. Judo guys are the guys that go for like arm locks and stuff. And within like a couple of minutes of the fight, I find myself on the ground with my arm fully extended, with my opponent trying to bring it home with him. Literally trying to rip my arm off. To make things worse, on the other side was the referee, who was trying to stop the fight. He's asking me, are you okay? Is everything okay? You know, I can see he's trying to step in. And well, this guy's trying to break my arm. This motherfucker trying to break my dream of making it to the UFC. And I don't know what to do. Am I defending my arm? Am I telling this motherfucker to get away from me? I'm like, what is this guy trying to do? You know, like, and I don't know what to do. But there was no way I was going to give up. So after about 40 seconds of being in an arm lock, I finally managed to make my way out of there and elbow my way to victory. Yes. It was a great moment. It was a great moment. And I honestly felt like, you know, don't give up. You know, go till the end and you will win then. However, that thought proved to be wrong sometimes also. And as a result, in some of my later fights, I ended up not tapping out also, but I ended up getting choked out and basically being woken up by the referee saying, all right, mate, time to go home, you lost your fight. But the weird thing about that was that even though I had lost the fight, and of course I was extremely upset with the loss, you know, that way, especially getting choked out, I had this weird feeling of calmness and content, knowing that I had done everything I could possibly do. There was literally nothing else I could have done more. It was just not my night. It just wasn't meant to be. And that kind of taught me a very valuable lesson. Always go to the end. Do not give up, because that gives you the biggest chance of success. But even if you don't succeed, you will feel content, because you will know I had done everything in my power, and this just was not my day, was not my night. I didn't get into the UFC on the back of the 6 wins, but I did get into the UFC. It was done through a different avenue. There was this show, and still is there, it's called the Ultimate Fighter House. It's a reality TV show where a bunch of fighters live in the same house. It's kind of like a Big Brother, but for fighters. You basically train together, you do everything together, and then you fight each other. You end up fighting like 4 times in 6 weeks. A lot of fights. And so this is how I made my way into the UFC. But again, it wasn't smooth, as with anything I do in life, it seems. Other than my head, it's nice and smooth. The thing is, the show Ultimate Fighter was meant to start a week after Conor's title fight, his very first title fight against Jose Aldo. And 14 weeks before the fight, we were meant to go on a world tour to promote his fight. So where they basically gave Conor a private jet, they gave Jose Aldo a private jet, and we were meant to go to 6 cities within 8 days and promote the fight. Now at the time, Conor wasn't yet as big as he is now. there wasn't as much money, so as a result, there was no team. It was just me and Connor that came on this journey, you know, just the two of us. And we were having a great time, you know, we were laughing. This was my first time on a private jet, you know, we were just loving life. We were training all the time. And then an unfortunate thing happened. In one of the training sessions, Connor re-injured his knee. And it was a knee that he had done his surgery on already. And he injured it very, very severely. I was there in the room when the phone rang and he was talking to the professor from LA, like one of the top surgeons in the world, Professor Elitrash, I still remember his name. And he said to Connor, look, forget about that fight in 14 weeks. There's no way you can do that. You need at least a year, you need another surgery, potentially 2 years. And I was there, but Connor told him, no mate, I'm fighting, just put the phone down. The camp was very, very stressful as a result, you know. We couldn't train, couldn't really do anything. It was all rehab, you know, we were just nursing the injury the whole time. To make things worse, 2 weeks before the fight, because prior to this we felt, okay, we're fighting Jose Aldo, it's going to be a stand-up fight, we're going to be okay. But 2 weeks before the fight, they changed the opponent, Jose pulls out, and they give us a wrestler, which was the worst matchmaking for us possible. We hadn't wrestled a day, we hadn't grappled at all. You know, suddenly things got even more serious. But Connor, being the man that he is, took the fight without blinking an eye and won in a spectacular fashion, you know. It was a very emotional night for the whole team, and for me personally, you know, I was there seeing his injury again, and I honestly was nearly crying in the cage. Yeah, and to make things worse, at an after party, we're there, I know I'm meant to fight in a few days' time, I know I'm meant to be good. And the coach, my fucking coach, John Cameron, says to me, here, we'll do just one, just have the one, we'll just celebrate it, we'll just toast the victory. You know, it was such an emotional camp, it was such an emotional roller coaster, it was such a long journey to get here, just have one. Those famous last words. 2 days later, in the 2 days I kept partying non-stop. I went from the nightclub to a beach, like a pool party, from a pool party back to the nightclub, from the nightclub back to the pool party, back to the nightclub, to this moment that I'm going to describe now, when I open my phone and the message comes in, Artem, you need to be at the Palace Station Hotel with all your things, you're going to fight to get into the Ultimate Fighter house. I arrived, hungover to bits. Well, just to let you know how bad I looked. It was in the middle of the day, I was still wearing my suit. Actually, it wasn't my suit. Somehow I ended up with Connor's jacket on me. And I looked so bad that when I walked down the street, people were like looking at me and like crossing the road and everything. And I was just like, what's going on, what's going on? I knew I did not look good. Long story short, I make it into the hotel with all my things. They take all my things off me, they take my phone off me, they lock me in a room, I'm not allowed to leave the room, I'm hungover there, they tell me, right, you have to make weight, and then you have to fight a day after that. Yeah, then the fight starts, we go at it, the fight is very exciting, you know, there's, you know, I'm getting hit in the head, there's punches flying everywhere, I give as much as I take. The fight ends, and the judges call out the decision. One judge gives the fight to me, and the other two judges give the fight to my opponent, meaning I lose the fight by split decision. My dream has ended before even starting. I go back to the house, I'm depressed, I'm nearly crying, you know, I can't believe this, I was like, fuck, this was my shot, and I blew it. Of course, the power of Connor, they decide to flip the script a little bit, and they say, look, we're going to let you and another team member of Team USA come back into the house for a second chance. And this was all that I needed. I was like, right, this is it now. No more drinking, no more messing about. I'm going to get this done. I win my first fight by a knockout. Second fight, I win my second fight by a knockout. And now, before the third fight, I feel that the guy that I lost to get into the house, he is also in the house. And I'm saying, right, this is my chance. I have to get a rematch with this guy, beat him, and prove to everybody, including myself, that I belong here and, you know, I should be here. Unfortunately, he loses a fight to another guy. So I'm thinking, okay, what's the next best thing? I have to fight the guy that beat him. I have to beat the guy that beat my guy. So I go straight up to Dana White and I said, Dana, give me that guy. I want him. I don't want no one else. Give me that guy. Julian Ross is his name. And I win that fight. I knock him out in 1 minute. It's probably one of my best performances ever. I win the fight. Conor jumps over the cage. We're celebrating. It's an unbelievable, feeling. I feel so good. To make things even better, I finished all my fights by knockout, which is something that only 2 other guys were able to do in 15 years of this, of the Ultimate Fighter running. I'm 35 now, recently retired. There was many reasons for my retirement. One of course being the health reasons. I understand how dangerous the sport of fighting is. Another, I'm recently, not that recently, 2.5 years ago, became a father. I have a little boy now, and I want to be a good dad. I want to be a capable dad. I want to be a capable granddad down the line. So it was a very thought out, although not an easy decision. And as I start this new journey now, I take all the lessons on board, I want to do something that I'm passionate about. I know that I'm going to give it everything I've got. And I expect to make some mistakes, but every single time I'm going to fix those mistakes and I'm going to keep coming back. Because as long as my heart is beating, I ain't quitting. Thank you.